You're listening to Civic Media. You can tune into any of our live shows on any radio station across the state with the Civic Media app. Find us in your phone's app store and listen anytime, anywhere.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Hey, good morning. It is 8:06. It is nice to have you here back up north on this Monday morning, September 29th, 2025. Parker Olson producing things down in Madison at Civic Media Headquarters, Studio A2. Coming up later this hour, our friend author Laura Bird will join us to mark this week's annual Day of Remembrance and Reconciliation about Native American boarding schools and several books that touch on that particular sad chapter of American history. We'll be hearing from Jane Matinair later this hour about what she and Greg Bach will have on Matinair on Air starting at 9 o'clock, and that will include your next chance to win in our Go for the Green and Gold Text to Win contest. In the news headlines today, the former state, I always want to say Commerce Secretary, but it's now the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, former Secretary Missy Hughes announced this morning that she's running for governor. So she joins a crowded Democratic field of candidates to succeed Governor Tony Evers in the 2026 elections. If you missed it late Friday, there were some other 2026 candidate announcements. Bill Berrien got out of the governor's race, the Republican businessman, and Democrat Laura Benjamin dropped out of the race for Congress in the 3rd Congressional District. That leaves two other Democrats, Becca Cook and also Emily Berge from the Eau Claire City Council, is still racing to have one of them take on Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden. There's a lot of motivation to take on Derek Van Orden and to unseat him from the 3rd Congressional District, not only for votes that he's taken that will be hurting farmers and frankly, anybody who needs health care in the 3rd Congressional District, but he has been undergoing what could quite accurately be described as a new Red Scare in this country. In the wake of the Charlie Kirk murder, there were plenty of people, myself included, who said that this was a true tragedy, that this should not have happened. But let us not sugarcoat who Charlie Kirk was, what he said, what he stood for. And I'm going to be first in that parade of people to make sure that we do not lionize or turn into a martyr this person who should not have been a victim, but we're also not going to sugarcoat who he was. A lot of people made comments to that effect. And Derek Van Orden and many others held them up for targeting, for threats, for doxing. And there have been, at this point, hundreds of people who have lost their jobs simply for expressing their points of view on the Charlie Kirk murder. One of those people no longer working in the job that she thought she was secure in is Krista Lasecki, who had been teaching in the Ellsworth School District until a few days ago. She's one of those people that Congressman Derek Van Orden chose to single out, and it unleashed some a certain segment of the population. And Krista is no longer in a classroom doing the work that she does best. And she joins us now to tell us more about the experience. Krista, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate your willingness to join us at what is definitely not an easy time for you, but you were teaching high school math in Ellsworth. Tell me about your teaching career, how long it lasted, and what all you've enjoyed doing.
This was my 32nd year, and I felt like as excited about it as I had in the beginning. I just love teaching, and I love teaching math because kids don't hate math. They just hate feeling dumb. And so that was my job, to make them know that they're not dumb.
And it's something that, again, you've been doing. This was what, your 32nd year, you said, of teaching?
Yeah.
3rd year in Ellsworth. And I'm betting that you did not start any social media accounts like just yesterday. You've been on social media for some time. You know how it works.
Yes.
Okay. So you put things out there, and people, don't always agree with what you have to say, but that's the notion of the nature of social media is you say things and people comment back and forth. So let's get to these specific events following the Charlie Kirk murder. Tell us about what it is you posted, and then what was your first indication that this was not things were not going to go the way that they typically do on people's social media posts.
Well, the night that he was murdered, um, I was watching the news and, scrolling on social media, and I was just getting caught up in the frustration of sanitizing this man's life because of the way that he had been murdered. And it was not my finest moment, but I quoted him and his um, belief that some deaths, some gun deaths are okay because they protect the Second Amendment. And I regretfully said that uh, that you can't be upset about this because he fulfilled his destiny. So it was not my finest moment, but I had quoted his exact words, um, and then um, that Friday morning, I got a call from administration on the way to school uh, at about 6:15, and then by 10 to 8, I was told to go home.
What did they tell you?
Uh,
And I should let me back up a second. That you have reached a separation agreement with the school district, so there are probably things that you can't talk about. But from a general standpoint, what is it that got you in trouble?
well, I'm honestly not exactly sure, only because it was a post that was done at night on my personal computer on my own time on a Facebook account that did not say where I worked. But the administrator that spoke with me uh, just said that it had caused a firestorm, and that was it.
Was there anything in your paperwork with the Ellsworth School District or any of your other teaching jobs that said anything about foregoing your First Amendment rights to free expression when you're not at work?
No,
No.
I did have one person, thank heavens, shout out to Tiffany, uh, who said, "Don't ever put where you work on it
Mhm.
because
But it
they
turns
can."
out you didn't have to because there were other people who were willing to do this, not to mention your congressman. When were you first aware that Congressman Van Orden had been part of the quote unquote firestorm?
Honestly, it wasn't until I had a meeting with the district that I was made aware that he had threatened the school district's funding and the city's funding.
And I want your reaction to that. When you heard that a member of Congress had looked at your post and threatened to cut off funding to the city of Ellsworth and or the school district, uh, what did you think about that coming from your congressman?
Well, he's not my representative,
Okay.
but I was shocked because the comments from people who disliked what I had to say were, she's a danger to be in the classroom. But if he thought that I was dangerous, what does he think defunding schools is going to do? Like, that hurts the entire community. And if he really is concerned about Ellsworth, then that's not that's not the path to take.
Yeah, I'm not really hearing concern from him about Ellsworth or education. He's somebody who's threatened to defund federal funding to the entire Mayo health system, which serves countless people, in and around your area and all throughout his particular congressional district. Did you feel when, again, the words that were used, like domestic terrorism and threats and everything, did you feel that those might have been a bit overblown?
A bit is an understatement. I mean, I'm not glad that Charlie Kirk was murdered, and I'm not happy with the way that I worded that. But I'm not a danger to students, and certainly a larger danger is to defund medical systems and school districts and cities in general.
We're talking to Krista Lasecki, former teacher in Ellsworth, about comments that she and many other people made about Charlie Kirk, and many other people have found themselves either without a job or facing the threat of unemployment as a result. Now, in your case, I mean, this has happened. This damage has been done. There's the possibility of legal action, perhaps, but for now, what has happened has happened. I've talked about the backlash to the backlash, that there was all this, what I want to say is emotional rhetoric from people like Derek Van Orden and others. But in the wake of what has happened to you and others, I feel like there's been a backlash as well, saying, hey, you're fine to be angry. You're fine to want to defend Charlie Kirk. But this whole thing, getting people fired, attacking the First Amendment, attacking funding, is beyond the line. Do you sense that as well, that there is a growing backlash to the people like Derek Van Orden, or are you more concerned that this is a new normal in America for a while?
Well, certainly that's a concern of mine. But I think that there is definitely a grassroots movement to unseat people like Van Orden, who think that he should be able to squelch the First Amendment from his seat of power, which is the definition of, my violating my civil rights.
Is
He
that
sim-
something that you think may, the violation of your civil rights is something that you may choose to go forward with?
I really haven't, gotten there yet. I'm still reeling from having to clean out my classroom yesterday.
Hmm. Yeah, and 32 years of teaching, and deciding where you go from here. Is teaching still something that you have a desire to do? Perhaps not anywhere near Derek Van Orden's district.
I love teaching. Anytime that I can get into a classroom is going to be a plus for me. But I can also, help kids by tutoring, or even just subbing in a high school allows me to have access to, helping kids. So th- that's my goal, is to somehow continue to connect with kids and math in specifically.
I don't doubt that you will, honestly. In some ways, that again, good people, good teachers, find that path forward. I have the utmost confidence that you're going to find that, and frankly, I think you're going to find a degree of justice as well. It won't be easy, and it is honestly a damn shame. It's an American shame that a teacher in the United States has to go through this. But I do appreciate you telling us about it and for sharing your story. And I hope that you will keep in touch with us, Krista.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Krista Lasecki, former teacher now in the Ellsworth School District, visiting with us this morning. It's 8:19. When we come back in about 15 minutes or so, we'll be talking to author Laura Bird about book recommendations for a different kind of dark chapter in American history, and that deals with Indian boarding schools and the ravages that it brought to children here in the United States. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
Now, I regret to tell you that Derek Van Orden is still doing Derek Van Orden things. I took a look at his Twitter feed during the commercial break here, and again, continues a stream of insults and threats and things that are not true. For example, we have the potential for a government shutdown in less than 48 hours now. And it is Republicans who have the majority in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they control the White House. And frankly, they control the U.S. Supreme Court too. And yet, here's a recent tweet from Derek Van Orden saying that the Wisconsin Democratic Party and Rebecca Cook are demanding the government shut down unless you pay for illegal aliens' health care, genital mutilation surgery for children, and Medicaid fraud. Let that sink in. This is what we are fighting for. We are fighting for sanity. That's a post from Derek Van Orden, a member of Congress, who again is in the majority. They have the votes to pass whatever they want to pass. You just saw it just a matter of weeks ago in the big bloated boondoggle, the thing that includes massive cuts to healthcare that are coming, the things that they want. They want the cuts to healthcare. It pays for tax cuts for the very wealthy and blows up the deficit, the thing they used to say they were so against. But now, even with the votes to pass something, they can't vote to pass a new federal budget. It's one thing to pass a bill that does all kinds of cuts, but a federal budget does so much more. It funds the entire federal government. It determines the taxes. It determines the spending. It determines the priorities. And Republicans are in the majority, and yet they can't agree amongst themselves on a budget. So if they want a budget, if they don't want the government to shut down, they're going to need at least some Democrats to come along with them. They could negotiate. Here's where Democrats started with negotiations. You want our votes? You pull back on some of those healthcare cuts. Pull back on a bunch of those healthcare cuts because it was stupid. And you guys did it. And you guys are in the majority. So if you want our votes, you're going to have to start there. Well, President Trump canceled a meeting last week with congressional leaders and took a much more combative stance and instead said, well, we don't need you. And we'll go ahead and shut down the government, which will send a whole lot of non-essential employees home. But you know what? We're actually going to do more than that, the White House said. And we're going to do even more layoffs than what is necessary. We'll do firings. In other words, they're holding federal employees and the federal government hostage. And what do we know about Donald Trump and congressional Republicans? They will always shoot the hostage. And they're saying, here's the thing. We're going to keep shooting the hostage. We're going to make the shutdown stretch out and let the hostage bleed and deny government services to more people. Our military is going to go without pay. TSA agents are going to have to go without pay. When they decide they don't want to work and not get paid and they call in sick, it's going to result in delays in air travel, processing of new Social Security applications and Medicare applications, confirmation of information for you to get a mortgage if you were buying a house, all of these things. And Republicans are good with that. Rather than agree amongst themselves, because again, they have the votes, they have the majority, but rather than agree amongst themselves, they've put out this fairy tale that by Democrats not giving them the extra votes they need, and not negotiating with Democrats to get those votes that they need, that somehow the Democrats are the bad guys in this. The one thing the bad guys, the Democrats, don't want is for people to go without health care and for government to shut down and for vital services to have longer waiting times and more inconvenience. And they're banking on that. They're hoping that public pressure somehow goes on Democrats to say, save us from those Republicans, save us, give them the votes, give them whatever they want so that they stop harming the hostage. And so, like it or not, what you're going to see in the United States starting this week for the foreseeable future is a messaging war. Whose fault is this? Is it really Democrats who are at fault if Republicans don't mind that the government is shut down? Because that's what they're going to try with garbage tweets like what Derek Van Orden just put up there, saying that somehow it's Democrats' fault. And what they'll do is, rather than talk about all the basic services that I just laid out for you, they're going to talk about illegal alien health care and genital mutilation surgery for children and Medicaid fraud. They don't believe any of that for a moment. These are folks who are very happy shutting down the government so that, again, all that savings can go to cut the taxes of their wealthiest donors. They love to talk about how well some of those healthcare cuts to the Affordable Care Act were subsidies, and those subsidies were helping the very rich people. Like you could have, what did one of them say? Something like a $600,000 annual income and still qualify for Obamacare subsidies. Technically true if you had 25 children, and if every one of those children were on an Affordable Care Act healthcare plan. Since when do Derek Van Orden and other Republicans suddenly care that wealthy families would be able to get help affording their health insurance? So yeah, they're going to try to sell this as some kind of fraud, waste, fraud, and abuse, these healthcare cuts, because a few people with higher incomes might actually get a break on their healthcare costs, which frankly almost all of us need. And they'll throw things out there like illegal alien healthcare to try to scare you that somehow the $1 trillion that they've cut in healthcare is going to undocumented immigrants' healthcare, when it's not. You know that. Most people know that. Most Americans know that. It's just a matter of whether they care enough to say out loud what they all know. Republicans are perfectly fine shutting down the government and hurting Americans and trying to blame anybody else but their own incompetence. They have the votes. What they don't have is an ability to govern. Back after this, I'm Pat Whitelow. You're up north. Hey, if you ever want to listen back to something that you've heard on the program or missed something and want to catch it, you should pod this program by heading over to Spotify and following us there, or Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And that way you can set it up for however you like. I know I've got several podcasts where I have like 5 episodes downloaded, the 5 most recent episodes. You can make it 3, 1, whatever. And that way you can catch it on demand when you want to. So again, we love having you live on the radio or on social media, but you can also take us along as a podcast and listen on demand. Back to our conversation with Krista Lysecki from Ellsworth a minute ago about losing her teacher job for basically, speaking out about Charlie Kirk and the kind of person he was and the things that he said, and it cost her job, thanks to Congressman Derek Van Orden. If you would like to support Krista in that effort, she does have a GoFundMe page up. I do like the headline, "Support a Teacher's Right to Speak Freely." And so we'll put a link to her GoFundMe in the show notes as well, that you can read over at civicmedia.us sometime after the show. Okay, we go on to another serious topic, and it too is an important topic that we need to look at. It's called National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It's marked in Canada. It's marked in the U.S. It's also known as Orange Shirt Day, and honors Indigenous children who suffered in residential schools, raising awareness about the tragic history of these schools and the ongoing impact on Indigenous communities in trying to take away a people's culture. And essentially, they were re-education camps. And there are a lot of books out there that can tell us about that era, things that we should not ignore, that we should know that part of our history so that we don't repeat things like that. And believe me, current events tell us more than ever we need to remember the things of our past and not repeat them. And of course, if we've got a bunch of books to recognize, well, it must involve Laura Bird, because she's here in Madison Studio 2A to tell us all about some of these books that we can look at for Orange Shirt Day. Laura, it is great to see you again. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having
All
me.
right. No, thank you for this. And thank you for the suggestion
Yeah.
for the topic here about the history of these schools. Let's talk, have you talk a bit at first about the residential school system and what it was at its heart.
Right. Well, you set me up really good here. So, as you mentioned, tomorrow is September 30th, and it's the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation here in the US. And it's also called the Orange Shirt Day. And the inspiration for that came from a Canadian woman named Phyllis Webstad. And when she was a little girl, her grandmother bought her an orange shirt for her first day of school. But when she arrived at her Indian residential school, this shirt was taken away from her, along with, of course, her identity and her dignity. So, this orange shirt has become symbolic of hope, reconciliation, and a commitment to a better future. So, we'll talk more about those Indian residential schools in just a minute. But I just wanted to say tomorrow, for September 30th, beyond choosing to wear an orange shirt or supporting someone who is wearing an orange shirt, one way that we can mark the important day is to read. And of course, Indigenous voices today are so rich and diverse, and there are great titles to choose from, especially right now, because we are in the middle of a Native American Renaissance. This is a real thing. It's a term that's used to reflect the significant increase of literary works by Indigenous authors. Um, the book that kind of kicked this off was back in 1968. I have not read this book, but I tracked it down at my local library. It's called The Housemaid of Dawn by N. Scott Momaday. And so this novel is widely credited as bringing Native American literature and voices into the mainstream. And it won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 1969. So it set us up today for some really great titles, which of course is why I'm here.
Exactly. Okay. Do you want to start with the picture books?
Yes, I always start with the littles. We got to make sure we hit the little kids. So the first one is this adorable board book called My Heart Fills with Happiness by Monique Gray Smith. She is a Canadian writer of Cree and Lakota descent. And interestingly, she actually dedicates this board book to the former students of the Indian residential schools. So I think there's some nice synergy here. So this is a precious little board book for kids as they recount what they're grateful for. Singing, walking barefoot in the grass, drumming with their dad. The illustrations are really simple and soothing with little pops of primary color. And little kids from Indigenous families will absolutely see themselves reflected back in the pages.
Very nice. What else?
Okay, for older kids, still a picture book, For a Girl Becoming by Joy Harjo. So if you recognize the name Joy Harjo, it is because she was the Poet Laureate of the United States from 2019 to 2022. And she's a seventh generation Manawa and a citizen of the Muskogee Nation. So this picture book is beautiful. It's sort of a benediction for a baby girl and the life that awaits her, both beautiful and difficult. And because it was written by Joy Harjo, it's going to be poetic and lyrical. And it's about the many gifts that each side of the family bring to this new infant: music, horses, seashells, turquoise. And one of my favorite lines from this book, because it's so beautiful, is remember the source of the gift of all breathing, which I think is just gorgeous. Okay.
Let's move on to middle grades.
Middle grade. I love middle grade. That's the age group I write for. So this is for your 8 to 12-year-olds. And I love James Byrd. We are not related. But James Byrd, spelled like mine, B-I-R-D, is of Ojibwe descent. And I love his stories, for this age group, especially for boys, and especially for boys who might not normally gravitate towards books. So this book, The Second Chance of Benjamin Waterfalls, is about a boy named Benjamin, and he's gotten caught one too many times shoplifting. And so his mom proposes sending him to boot camp at the Ojibwe reservation where they used to live. And so soon Benny is on his way to Grand Portage, Minnesota to move in with his dad, who he hasn't seen in a while. Enter in the tribal leader's daughter, and suddenly boot camp is not quite what Benjamin expected. Exciting stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to talk YA now. So young adults, this is your teenagers, right? These are your 13 to 18-year-olds. And I can't wait to talk to you about Angeline Booley. She is amazing. She's a member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians, and she writes about her Ojibwe community living in the UP of Michigan. So her debut, which came out a few years ago, was called Firekeeper's Daughter, and it was hugely successful. In fact, I'm mentioning it today because I found out it's been optioned by the Obama's production company to be adapted into a Netflix series. So I have no idea when this is going to happen, but watch for that. But in the meantime, this is Angeline Boulley's second novel, Warrior Girl Unearthed, and it centers on a 16-year-old named Perry who uncovers a web of cultural theft. So she ends up embarking on this like dangerous, turbulent mission to reclaim her ancestors' heritage while also uncovering secrets that threaten the safety of her community. So this book is about activism, identity, and survival. And Angeline Boulley is known for being this like thrilling author, and there's lots of drama. So this is great for that YA audience. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that she actually has a third book that just came out. I don't even have a copy. It's like fresh off the presses, but it's called Sisters in the Wind, and it's a thriller, again, that incorporates some of these same characters and the same setting as her first two books. So
Before we go on to the adult books here, we should also note if people are hearing all these books about our indigenous communities and they want to learn more, is there a particular website that would be especially helpful for that?
I don't know of a specific website, but I was going to mention later in our chat that there is a wonderful bookstore called Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis. And if anyone lives close to Minneapolis or is driving through the city, you should absolutely stop there. It is owned by the legendary Indigenous author Louise Erdrich, who's one of my favorites. And she specializes in Indigenous titles and Indigenous authors. And to walk inside that bookstore is absolutely magical. I mean, you could just walk in the door and look at the display that she's got and learn more about all of these books and then some.
All right, that's birchbarkbooks.com. Keep that in mind. All right, let's move on to the adult books, starting with fiction.
Yeah. Oh, this one's great. Never Whistle at Night. And this is an Indigenous dark fiction anthology edited by Shane Hawk and Theodore Van Ulst. So, as I've learned, many Indigenous people believe that one should never whistle at night because it can cause evil spirits to appear and follow you home. So, hence the title, Never Whistle at Night. So, this is a very clever and sinister collection of 25 stories, and they come from Indigenous authors, both new and established. And these authors pose the intriguing question, are you ready to be unsettled? So their stories center on ghosts, curses, family legacies, and acts of revenge. So if you like fantasy, gritty crime, or sci-fi, this one's for you.
All right, I got about 3 minutes here to do 4 more books.
Okay, we're going to do it really fast.
All right.
Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. Morgan Talty is a citizen of the Penobscot Indian Nation, and he had an award-winning collection of short stories that came out a few years ago called Night of the Living Rez. But this is his novel, Fire Exit, and it's about a man named Charles who watches the life he might have had unfold on his reservation in Maine. He watches as this other family raises their daughter, Elizabeth, only no spoilers here. Elizabeth is actually his daughter. And so Morgan Talty writes so beautifully and hauntingly of legacy and bloodlines and inheritance.
All right. One more in the adult fiction?
Sure. This one, okay, this is hot off the presses. I haven't even read this book yet, but I had to mention it because it's getting so much buzz. It's called To the Moon and Back by Eliana Ramage. And she is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and she spent more than a decade writing this novel. It's her debut about a Cherokee woman who decides as a child that she wants to be an astronaut no matter the cost. So this is going to be hot this year, To the Moon and Back.
Right. And finally, adult nonfiction.
Okay, Medicine River, a story of survival and the legacy of Indian boarding schools. So again, this ties in really nicely with Orange Shirt Day tomorrow. This book is by Mary Annette Pember. So as I mentioned earlier, as you mentioned, tens of thousands of Native children were pulled from their tribal communities to attend these boarding schools where they were forced to assimilate into white culture. And this was roughly from like the mid-19th century to the 1930s. Among the children at these boarding schools was the mother of the author here. Mary Annette Pember's mother was sent to a boarding school in northern Wisconsin at the age of 5. She faced a lot of trauma, and it was, of course, passed on to Mary herself. So in Medicine River, she incorporates interviews and careful reporting. And ultimately, she paints a really stark but hopeful portrait of communities who are still reckoning with the trauma of these boarding schools.
Okay. And in our last book?
Last Minute, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is one of my favorite books of all times. She is a botanist, professor, and enrolled member of the Potawatomi Nation, and she writes gorgeously about our connection to the earth. She has a chapter about strawberries, one about corn, one about moss, and she shows us all the ways that we're connected to each other and to them.
All right.
Yeah, it's about living mindfully in reciprocity with the earth and really
Oh.
sharing our gratitude.
There's a lot there, and birchbarkbooks.com is a website you can check out as well. Laura Ann Bird, we always learn so much. Thank you so much for the visit today.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. We will be talking to Jane Matnair, find out what's happening next on Matnair on Air across the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Remember, you can sign up for our newsletters, the weekday version, the Sunday morning one that has a focus on politics. Just head over to upnorthnewswi.com, click subscribe up in the top banner, and while you're at it, sign up for the new Civic Media daily newsletter, Civic Media Today. Go to civicmediatoday.substack.com and get your share of a couple of the best newsletters you could have to learn about all things Wisconsin. And along with that and this show, there's Jane Matnair. You're going to learn a lot about Wisconsin from her. How are you, Jane?
Good morning, Pat. I am fantastic, and I do just want to give a plug for the newsletter.
They
I'm
did a
slightly
nice
biased.
job. Yes.
They do a great job, and it's a wonderful little aggregate of everything, and it gives you little tastes of everything.
Oh,
and
that's what we should have called it, the Civic Media Sampler Platter.
Oh, that's good. But then if you want to know more, you can click on links and get more information, and it's really, they've done a great job.
Yes.
They've done a great job.
And, before I forget the people that actually pay me at Up North News, Ellie Bordeaux, our new newsletter editor, will join us for the first time on Wednesday morning, right after the 7 o'clock news. So come meet Ellie on Wednesday morning.
Up North News has a great newsletter, too.
Thank you. Yes,
You really do.
We've worked very hard on that. And so, I subscribe to a lot, and then I have to remember to unsubscribe from them, but I want to see what they're up to.
You're afraid it's going to come back and haunt you, and you're going to have to explain why you were following those accounts?
No, because I'm not Bill Berrien. I
There
don't
you
mind
go.
the stuff that I have surfed. It's okay, and I'm not busy trashing anybody. But you have to look at all these different newsletters to figure out, where do you get useful information and what is junk, and then you just kind of set those aside. And that's. Look, the newsletter business is kind of like the radio or TV business. There's, you never watch this or read or listen to the same things all the time. Things change.
Yep.
And so that's where, again, if you're not seeing that Civic Media newsletter or the one from Up North News, go check those out. And you can read them while you're listening to programs like ours and Jane and Greg's coming up next. What you got happening today?
Well, Shali Pittman, Civic Media's news director, she is going to join us at 9:30. She does an incredible job keeping track of all of the things that are happening, especially locally in Wisconsin and across Wisconsin. So Shali's going to join us around 9:35. In hour number 2 today, our friend from UW-Madison, he is a wildlife expert. David Drake is going to join us. There was a report about the increasing number of PFAS showing up in Wisconsin ducks. And so if you are a duck hunter and you like to consume ducks that you catch, there are limits now. So we're going to be talking about that with David Drake as well. For the rest of the week, all kinds of stuff coming up. Todd Alba will be joining us tomorrow at 9:35. We're going to talk to Darren Von Ruden, who is the head of the Wisconsin Soybean Growers Association, or Wisconsin Farmers Union, in Wisconsin. So we're going to talk to Darren on Wednesday. Lots of things to talk to Darren about.
Oh, without a doubt. And again, Darren Von Ruden is from the Farmers Union, who actually represents farmers. Derek Van Orden is the congressman
Yeah.
who does not.
Well, yeah, and we're going to talk about Mr. Van Orden in the first half an hour as well, and fascists.
Yeah.
And Darren Van Orden now thinks that anyone who calls anyone a fascist apparently should go to jail or prison.
Mm-hmm.
We have a compilation of an interesting person who uses that word a
Really?
lot. Yeah.
Who could that be? Who
One wonders.
maybe should be in prison orange as well?
Yeah.
Anyway, so we got that coming up. What'd you do over the weekend? Now, first off, let's establish the wisdom of our ages, of those of us of a certain age who can be Packer fans, but do not stay up way past our bedtimes to watch a tie in Dallas.
That was amazing. We, Paul and I both did a lot of work outside yesterday because it was such a beautiful day. And my neighbor had loaned me what I call their clippers of power. So I borrowed the neighbor's super clippers and I trimmed bushes and whacked bushes for like 2.5 hours yesterday.
Ooh.
I was so sore
Yeah.
when I got done. I went to bed last night at 7:45. And I couldn't get comfortable. My shoulder hurts and my back hurts and my this hurts and my that. So I finally got up about 10 o'clock to come downstairs and take some
a
aspirin.
little dose of autism there that you took?
I got
Yeah?
a little
No?
dose. A little dose of bear is what
Yeah.
I took.
Oh, okay, good.
And my husband was still up watching the game, and
Oh.
I saw him go up 2016. And I went to bed and thought, well, this is good. We'll be
Yeah,
we'll
me
be
too.
good.
I did.
Yeah.
In 2016, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right. You know?
It should. I'm not going to worry about it. And then to wake, I heard you this morning. 40-40 tie.
Gosh.
Youch.
No, I'm not staying up for that. And it turns out that, again, maybe it's a reflection of our age, but we've got a local watering hole here where people gather for Packer games. And maybe it's just because it's early in the season. I don't know. But a lot of the usual suspects decided to sit this one out. It's a late Sunday night, maybe later in the season, there would be reason for it if there
Right.
were playoffs at stake or something.
Right.
But for this, it was like, no, I'll see you in a couple of weeks after the bye. In the
Yeah.
meantime, we get to get excited for Brewers baseball instead.
Absolutely. Lots and lots and lots of excitement there. Oh, by the way, if my husband is listening, happy anniversary a day late. I actually I forgot our anniversary yesterday.
No.
I bought a card. I had the card all ready to go, and I got up yesterday morning before he did, and I'm having my coffee, and he comes in and gives me a kiss and good morning, and I said, good morning. He said, you know what day it is? I said, it's Sunday. What?
Oh, Jane.
I know.
Oh.
I forgot our 23rd anniversary.
Wow.
See, guys, so it's not just
It happens.
It
doesn't
happens.
just happen to the guys.
No, it was me.
See, that's part of why when we were talking about wedding dates and all that, and ours is July 5th. And
Nice.
my birthday is July 3rd.
Oh, jeez.
So there's no way
You
I
can
set it up so that
forget.
I can't possibly escape, from knowing when my anniversary is.
That's
So,
that's very wise.
hey, that's my advice for a happy marriage is to never forget your anniversary. Cheat and pick something right next to important holidays. So Jane, Matt, and Eric coming up next, along with Greg Bach from Matt and Eric on Air. Thank you, Jane. Have a great
Thanks a
start to
lot,
the week.
Pat. Take
All
care,
right.
Parker.
All right. And
Thank
thanks
you,
to all of
Jane.
you for being part of things today. I'm Pat Kreitlow, founding editor of Up North News, part of Courier Newsroom, a pro-democracy news network. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll see you bright and early, 6 a.m. here back up.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.